All right, we just went through the list. Let's go back and look at it one more time and see, can you think of anything else you'd like to add to that list? There's a lot more. I just kind of gave you a sample of all the rules and principles and objectives of performance measures. But can you see how if you don't know that, you're going to break those, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I mean, if you don't think in terms of a family of measures, you might just focus on cost. If you don't think about punishment, you might do the wrong thing and have higher turnover and
Right.
work against performance measures. If you don't avoid the whole concept of simple, you may make it harder to use, or you may measure too much, and then people are spending their whole day measuring, and so you're very efficient at measuring, but that's not what they're hired to do. They're hired to
Right.
focus on the customer.
Yep.
And any other thoughts?
Not for me.
All
Not
right.
for me either.
All right, let's go to the next step. So that's all just the first step. So we could have, we got to get smart before we start. And now the next thing is understand organizational goals. And why do we have to do that? Because if it's not related to the goal, you got to ask yourself, why are we measuring this? Right? So this is, let me make sure.
PAL. Yeah.
Yeah, had a typo there. Well, it was a quote. So the principal, that's a pal, that's a person. You sure?
Yeah. That's the
Okay.
primary.
All right.
That's correct.
All right. The principal purpose of, see, I tell everybody, Ann's our person we go to when we want an editing answer. So she's very good at that. And and I'm an engineer. And Patricia's, you're very much a people person and all around.
Yeah. We
person.
just know what it means. We don't know how to spell it.
We're all around people person. Ann's are really good grammatical expertise and a whole
Yes.
bunch of technical stuff. And I'm just kind of an engineer.
A little bit more than just kind of an engineer.
Yeah. The starting point of measure is set of clear organizational goals. That makes sense to me. The principal purpose of the performance measure is to gauge progress against stated program goals and objectives, presupposing that the strategic program objectives are known. So we have to do a little work and we have to know what our objectives are, because sometimes they get hidden. And sometimes they get lost. And sometimes it's hard to really know what are we trying to do here. Okay. All right. The next one is The Laws of Fifth Discipline. This is a book I really liked. And it's all about systems thinking. Find the system and ask is doing what it's supposed to do. Improving customer relations, for example, measuring the amount of desk time that we gave before likely might work against spending the time with the customer. So make sure that the system ensures what you want done. Connect everything whatsoever to the goals. I don't know where that came from, but anyway, so
We
this
got
is
it.
Peter Senge, Fifth Discipline. All right, here's a goals tree. Look for the non-connecting goals when you cut services and parts of the organization. So there's the highest goals, those division goals. There's the product goals. Here's the personal goals. And this guy's goal is really getting away from him. So if I were to look at something that we no longer need to do, we no longer need to do, then I'd be looking for things like this. What's getting us away from our goals? And that's a good place to think of way to do. Also, well, it's a subject for a different thing, so I'm not going to go there. All right, management by objectives would be an example of that. The management defines organizational goals. And this may not be a good example or a bad example, but let's see. There's 5 stages that organizational goals are delegated down the hierarchy, and management subordinate agree on subordinates performance contract, and then they implement the plan and review the results. That would be an example of something. Sometimes it's a bad example. All right, so that's all of that I have on these slides. Do you want to add anything to that? I'll go into here. Do you want to add anything to organizational goals? Something you've witnessed in the past, maybe, or? All right, I'm going to tell you what goals. So the goal of our organization could be low cost, and it could be high quality, and we're building little, okay, let's make it fun. So we're building golf cart type vehicles that are shaped like Jaguars and fancy and really nice vehicles, but they're really designed to carry our golf clubs around, so that's what we're doing. So what would some of those goals be in that type of organization? What would the criteria be related to those goals? And so a goal might be, well, we got to have a certain number, we got to meet our demand. It may be that we want them to be high quality so they feel like they're a little better than the normal golf cart. We want the form, fit, and function. So we want the form to look like this is something unique for this golf course. No other golf course has this. The fit, it fits into the organization, and the golf clubs fit into the vehicle, right?
It fits a certain kind of customer.
Yeah, it fits maybe a certain kind of customer. So that would be the form and fit in that. And then the function, it's got to actually drive around the golf course. It's got to actually hold the clubs. People got to get in and out without killing themselves. So it's going to be really hard to create that vehicle and make it look like what we want. So we may go for a Hummer, something like that, something cool. But that's what we want to do. We decided that we want high quality. And one of the things of high quality, we want a really shiny paint, right? So that's our criteria. Well, we think it's high quality if all the parts fit together right, and it's got shiny paint. So quality is our goal. High quality. It's got to be, the form's got to be attractive and things like that. So our goals are those, and we got to produce them fast. Our criteria might be the quality, high quality, high performance, things like that. So now the next question is, well, let's see what we can do about quality. So we got to keep the end in mind. What are the important criteria related to the goals? Remember, we said there's effectiveness and efficiency. So effectiveness could be we're doing the work right. In the golf cart company, maybe we're getting the golf carts out and they fit they're doing exactly what we want them to do, right? And we may actually want to change this depending on what the clientele's asking for, right? And the efficiency, we're doing that really well, right? And then, so if we go a little further, this is, I think I might have said this already. Did I tell you about the story of the report, right? Getting out quicker. And so we want to make sure that what the report's about is the important thing, right? So improving and maintaining customer satisfaction, both internally and externally, may be a goal. So we might want to be best in class and quality. That may help us to feel good about ourselves. The cost that hits our products may have a sweet spot. There's a sweet spot where people will pay for this product that functions like a golf cart, but looks like something a little cooler than a golf cart. And we may want it to deliver these 2 days after they order them, which would sound like impossible, right? So it may be a month after they order them, something like that. But anyway.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. No,
I was going to ask a question. Would customer experience fit into something like this to be a corporate goal? Because I'm noticing that when I go to Lowe's or Kroger's or a lot of the stores, there seems to be a goal. I was leaving Kroger the other day, and this young man that loads groceries for the people, puts them in the bag. As I was walking out, he hadn't done mine. I did the self-service, but he said, "Thank you for shopping at Kroger's. You have a great day." And I thought, is that one of their criteria for measuring the effectiveness of their organization and the image is that, I don't know. I'm just asking
Yeah.
that, but I was impressed with that.
So if the goal was a great customer experience,
Yes,
then criteria might be, we want to be friendly.
Yes.
We want to be clean.
yes.
We want to be, quick.
Helpful.
Yeah, helpful and quick, and those kind of are criteria. And then that leads to our goal of excellent customer focus. But how do we measure clean? How do we measure? And that's going to lead into our next step.
Yeah,
So we want to be clean, we want to be helpful, we want to be this stuff, but now we got to measure helpful, right?
yes,
And
yes,
so that's leads right into the next step. And an example of I usually give is that our criteria, our goal is high quality cars. One of our criteria is very shiny paint, on our golf
Yes.
cart, for example. And then criteria, the indicator is shiny. What does shiny mean? Because shiny could be all kinds of things. So an old way to measure shiny would be to set a yardstick on top of the surface under a certain light and see how many inches you can count up from the reflection. So 20 inches is shinier than 10 inches. And when people used to spit shine their boots in the military, they'd hold it up to their mouth, and smile and see if they can count their teeth,
oh, cool.
and that was, if they count their teeth, it was shiny enough. If they couldn't count their teeth, then it wasn't shiny enough. That's be an example. So indicators of what's helpfulness, maybe that would be observation. Maybe
Yes.
then we're getting into collecting data, but we got to figure out what are the indicators,
indicators.
right? It could be how many positive comments we get. You often, people are asking you when they answer your questions about your computer on the phone, they say, don't forget to fill out the survey,
Yes,
because those are indicators of how helpful they were.
right.
Indicators.
And yeah, I think that, yeah, very important. And I always try to give the manager, I say, to that young man, I ask, what is your name? Because I want to tell the manager. And I also want to give, I'm big on that. I think it's important. We don't get enough attention, but I like that. That's a very good explanation of it. So how do we measure that? Yeah. Customer satisfaction, feedback surveys, you say, huh?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we'll get into that next when we get to
Oh.
indicators. But that's right. You're along the right path.
Yeah.
So we
Okay.
know what our goal is: great customer service experience, criteria, helpfulness, cleanliness. Well, how would we measure cleanliness? Maybe.
Oh, I see the data
Yeah.
collection.
Yeah. And then when we measure cleanliness, maybe we go around and we have a checklist. Okay. Any garbage outside the place, any
Yeah.
streaks on the windows, so those are indicators that we're clean or not clean,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Very
And
good. Yeah.
Yeah. And then as far as indicators, we look at one criteria at a time. We don't just try to collect them. So there's a hierarchy. There's a goal, a bunch of criteria, and each criteria has indicators. Right?
Yeah.
And so we might look at one at a time. We might list potential brainstorm on these. We'll screen out some of them. We'll rate them. Well, what's more important, this or that? And then we'll start with the highest one, and those will give higher weighted value to, maybe. That's the kind of how we might handle that.
Another thing, you're helping me too, because it's bringing to visual the things that we do, but we don't think about them. But for a small business, I'm thinking about, because I'm in transition right now, and I'm thinking about all of these things about my own business that I'm putting in, reforming. And these are absolutely on target as far as a large corporation, an individual, or a small business organization to measure themselves. I love this. This is right on target. Yeah.
Yep. And so you use the word benchmarks,
Yes.
and I like benchmarking and benchmarks. So I usually explain it this way. A benchmark is a noun. Benchmarking is a verb. So a benchmark would be, what is our competition doing? What are the best people in the world doing? And here we are. This is what we're actually doing here. You can tell this is old because it's not pretty, right? Now you can do all kinds of grass. But in the olden days, if you see old grass and they're like very sharp, that usually means it was done early 90s or before. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to surpass this target with your benchmarks. This is the
Yeah.
benchmark, and you're trying to beat those benchmarks. So that's benchmarks. Benchmarking is the process of figuring out, well, why are they so good? So you put a team of people together, you find non-competitors of yours, like if you're in the hospital industry and you want to have better customer experience, patient experience, you might go to really good hotels and ask what they do and how they do it. And you might go to really good call centers that have nothing to do with healthcare. Because if you go to the same competitors that are better than you, then chances are they're not going to invite you. And that may not give you the right information either. They may actually be competitors. And all right, so now.
Can I add something to that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
I've also found that if you go outside of your industry looking for answers to a particular situation, they are from a totally different perspective. And if you ask the people in your industry, you're all pretty much doing the same general thing. So you could get a really good result by finding out what other people are doing and coming at it and saying, oh my gosh, I never thought of approaching it that way. And then you could exceed that benchmark that the other company has, and you can take off in a whole different direction.
Yeah, you have to be a little disruptive to
Mhm.
break the benchmarks.
We get caught in the forest, don't we? And forget about, and blinded to what trees are really there. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's,
can I add one thing to this?
absolutely.
I had a responsibility for a department, and I think this fits in here. You can tell me if it doesn't. A responsibility for a department that delivered mail to a corporation internally. And I remember they approached me, the employees. You know me, I'm always about the people, but they approached me about, they wanted to take off at different times. Some were mothers with children, and so they wanted to be able to go home. And I said to them, so it kind of reminds me of this benchmarking. I said, here's what we have to get done. So I gave them a target. This is what we must get done each day. You go back and figure out how you're going to get all that done in an excellent way. And I don't care how you work. Well, you then create the hours. Now, is that a similar kind of thing? Does that fit in there?
Well, what's interesting about that is that with COVID, we're seeing more of that. But well,
that was in the 80s.
Yeah, in the 80s, the trend was, and everybody was saying things like this. They were saying that in the future, you're going to get paid for the quality and the work you get done, not by how long it takes you to do it. Does that make sense?
They were union employees. I might add that too.
Right. Oh, that changes everything. I got a bunch of union stories too.
They could work in, I let them work any hours they want to because they came up with the design.
Yep. Yeah. And it's, you should be paid for your result, not
That's
the process of getting result.
That was the target. Yes. Get the results. And yeah. Okay. So I'm just,
Yeah. If you were to hire somebody to come and build your home and they said, we'll build this home for $300,000. And you say, great. And they said, we'll get it done in 3 months. Great. If they could get it done in 1 month and it was still same quality, wouldn't that be better? And
for them and for me.
Yeah. Would you still not pay the $300,000? And so that was the whole point between, what they were saying in the 80s, 90s and on up. So but if you think of that too, and that only works in a certain environment. It doesn't work in other environments. And so a lot of these concepts only work in a environment where there's a lot of freedom.
That's
Okay.
why we have to know what we're measuring, why we're measuring it, and the value it adds for the measurement. That's why it's very critical. There's not
Right.
one size fits all. Yeah.
Yeah, and example I would give is that if you think of places that are not strong in freedom, you know, countries and places, they're looking at the time you spend there because they're trying to keep you busy. They're trying to keep you under control. But the more freedom you have, the more freedom you have to go outside of that box. So in a highly communist country, you know, it's a different measurement. It's a different involvement. You know, there's not a free enterprise type view of the
Yeah.
same stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of this doesn't work in certain environments. All right, so now collect the data. When you collect the data, there may be qualitative data and quantitative data. If we're looking at cost, that's easy. It's dollars, you know, per unit maybe. If we're looking at how you feel about the culture, then it becomes very qualitative, right?
Right.
And so that is more of a survey, more of a Likert scale. Are you very satisfied, very dissatisfied, or neutral? You know, and there's 5 points to that scale, a Likert 5-point scale. So satisfied, very satisfied, satisfied, neutral, very dissatisfied, or dissatisfied, very dissatisfied. That'd be an example, right? So you can quantify intangibles, which are the qualitative measures, but those are all subjective. They're not necessarily easy to count. Whereas we can count how many golf carts we get out the door, but we can't necessarily count easily the
quality.
impression we make on the customer when they first get it.
Right.
And if we're trying to create that excitement of getting this, then we have to find other ways to do it. In the hotel industry, what I would recommend, or the restaurant industry, is that you can't always do these surveys like, here, you're going to eat the steak. Here's a survey. You know, so what you're doing is you're asking the survey and you're measuring that over a bunch of customers. And you may ask them a series of 20 questions, but any one customer may only get 2. Like, was your food hot enough? You know, was it, did you like the flavor? You know, was I quick enough? Did I bring it out to you quick enough? Did you have any, you know, so you think of those 20 questions you want to ask, and you take it over a bunch of because you're working on with statistics at this point. You have,
Right.
you're trying to gather that survey, but it's not always the same person, right? And so in some cases, they'll sit down, they'll spend 10 minutes on your survey. And some questions you just ask them at the door. Was our hotel easy to find? You know, and whatever the key criteria is for you. How did you find out about us? You know, you may ask different people different series of questions, or you may ask one question over a period of time, and then ask another question over a period of time, and do it that way. But qualitative and quantitative, quantitative, qualitative. Quantitative is just what it sounds like. There are numbers involved, and it's easy to count. Qualitative is harder. All right, so the next one is process and analyze. There's a bunch of ways to do that, but if we collect the data, we better process it. We better analyze it. And with AI and the tools we have and the data science we have, we can draw pictures. You know, we can do a heat map of the United States, right? We can say, well, this is where people are most satisfied. This is people most dissatisfied. This is where people are spending most amount of money buying real estate. You know, this is where people are where the most of the houses are being sold. You know, we can do all kinds of things, but the processing and analyzing the data that you collect is the 6th step, and you can't do without that because you're just imagining things. My one of my mentor professors, Dr. Westbrook, he was loved him so much I named the company after him. But he was a mentor, And he said something like this: the number one enemy of good quality and other things, but good quality are the words I think I know. I think I know what we're doing. I know what this answer is going to be. That's the number one enemy to good quality, number one enemy. And the antidote to that enemy, the I guess what would be the opposite of enemy? The hero, your hero to fight that enemy is going through this process, processing that information, using that data, analyzing that data. So you don't have to think, you don't have to guess, you don't have to,
Right.
you it's going to tell you what's going on. All right, ready next one, or you want to add something? Because you guys have lots of good experiences if you want to see that.
I know you're going to get to step 7, and that's where that was a bane of my existence at one point in time in my life when I was just starting out, because I was tasked with doing productivity studies on all the equipment that we had in our facility in order to use this proprietary system for our industry. And I went through all of that. I got the first round in, and then I told them we have to go back and analyze this data and make sure it's good and it will change over time. And they would let me go back and do the process over again or check up on, the information I had in there, but then they wouldn't let me change it because everybody was accustomed to just the numbers that were in there. And they
Yeah.
didn't want to have to deal with adjusting numbers, or I had grief from the salespeople because they didn't want to have to change anything on their end. Production people were all, so I would do this work over and over and over again because management told me to do it, and then it would go nowhere.
Yeah, I got an example too. The government's terrible about this, right? So one administration will come in, they'll wreck everything the other administration did, and that's just goes on forever. But on the department side, the governmental department side, where there's different offices, they do the same type of thing, even down deep, And an example of that may be that we spent $100,000 last year, and this year we spent 80. So we got to figure out a way to spend an extra $20,000. So they'll go buy $20,000 worth of report that they'll never use just to get that $20,000 spent. And so I was involved in that a lot, where I would go in and I'd do a report, and I would do a lot of work. It was really good work. We thought this was earth-changing work, and it would end up on the shelf, and they would do the exact same thing next year. And they would have the same report done over and over and over and over at the end of the year, and never use any of it. And
yeah, I think that's interesting because Daniel Pink in his book talks about we're a checklist society, and for the use of information, I see that we do a lot of different kind of training just because it's a checklist. And I can vouch that we'll bring in training because it's the thing to do, and it doesn't shift a thing in our organization, the way people believe, the way they work, or anything. So it's just another checklist of the way we use information to say, yeah, we're current. Yeah, we taught you how to be a leader. Yeah, so I think it's just doing it for the image it creates, and it does no value.
Yeah. And so the final thing I'm going to leave with is just do it. Start to improve. And so we're begin with a reasonable set of metrics, refine them as data is collected and you experience more of what you're trying to do. And do not insist on perfect set of metrics at first, because they'll never be perfect. So the whole concept of continuous improvement is the reason you have measures, but it's also applied to measures.
Right.
You start somewhere and continuously improve on that. Make it easier, make it quicker, make it simpler, make it easier to communicate, and that's what you do with performance measures. And so with that said, I have exhausted everything I know about performance measures. And, other than all kinds of stories and other things, but it all boils down to it fits together in a picture. And
Yes.
without it, you can't have excellent management, can't have excellent leadership, can't have excellent culture, can't have excellent customer focus. You don't have team building, you don't have excellent people skills, you don't have excellent core competencies and training, like, parts of that. You don't have excellent processes, you don't have excellent systems, because it all keys to performance measures. But the key to this, a very immature manager will start with performance measures. I didn't say this before, but that's part of this model. You always start leadership, culture, focus on the customer, include the people, build the teams, build their core competencies, and get the right systems and processes, and then measure performance along the way. If you start from this end, it's a sign of immaturity. If you start from this end, it's a sign of having your act together. You understand that without leadership, performance measures will never happen. Without the culture accepting it, without it being focused on the customer, why are you doing it? If you're not focused on the customer, why are you doing it? Without, people and their skills and the processes, the systems, it'll never be worth anything. So anyway, so that's all I got to say.
Yeah. It
All right.
fits with me. It supports what we've been talking about, the value of measurements. And if I were to close this out with anything, I'd go right back to the very first quote. Without measurement, we don't know if there is improvement. We don't know what is meaningful. So it just kind of validates all of that we've been talking about.
Yep. And Ann, you're going to say goodbye for us today.
Okay.
You said hello, so say goodbye for us.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, and we hope we brought value to you, helped you to understand performance measures and how they can be beneficial to you personally or you through your company. I'm Ann Jagger, and on behalf of Patricia Leonard and Craig A. Stevens, we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us on Change Mentors.
Thank you. Bye.